So happy to take any questions.
Good, because we do have, I'm sure, some questions, and we have 20 minutes to ask them. I always try and let the students go first, for really, in case.
Don't leave before I want to write down the details of that.
Yeah, okay, great. Anybody want to jump off?
I'll go.
All right, Allie.
So my name is Allie. I was wondering if you could talk a little about the Desert Renewable Energy Conservation Plan and what happened with that.
Yeah, okay, so it's actually been hugely controversial, some of these renewable projects. And it's really interesting to see environmentalists fighting renewable energy, but that's what happened. I was just at a project, we have these hearings before we have a vote, okay, so that's where I was 2 weeks ago. And there's all these environmentalists opposing a large-scale solar project. Why? Because in this area, they have desert tortoises who can be impacted, there's the desert kit fox, et cetera. So the idea behind this plan was, let's make a deal, let's identify, and this is probably for an area that's maybe 1/8 of the state, it's a big chunk of land. Let's identify a renewable energy zone that's acceptable generally to most parties. And then in that zone, let's fast track the permitting. Permitting takes a long time, it's really expensive. Typically it's a minimum of a year to get a big project like this permitted. And so that plan is still being sorted out, but it's, hopefully in the next few months it gets finalized. That's the basic idea.
Jack.
I have a couple questions. One is, what was all those huge projects you showed? Like, what was your guys' role in all of those projects? And then the other question is, how you got your start in renewable energies, and like what advice you would have for someone looking to get into similar work.
Great. So first, we permitted most but not all of those projects. So the PV ones don't come to us for permitting, but the solar thermal and the geothermal do. So we have to approve those. I think it's really important to have mentors. And I was really lucky when I started. I had a guy who was kind of the energy czar in San Francisco who just took me under his wing. And I was like a sponge. I just soaked up all of his advice. He ran the first successful campaign in the United States to shut down a nuclear plant, which is the Rancho Seco plant in Sacramento. They lost the first time, talk about relentless, went back the next year, reorganized and won. And in its place, they created, at the time, in the mid-'80s, the largest solar project in the United States, in Sacramento. And he was just a huge mentor to me. His name is Ed Smeloff. And I was lucky to have some people like that who really encouraged me. I strongly advise anyone who's serious. I've counseled probably 20, 30 people, in the last few years who want to get into the renewable industry. Everybody who's really, really motivated gets in. There's opportunity. But you got to be tenacious. And a great place to start is to go to one of the renewable energy shows. So in the U.S., there's really two that are big. There's Intersolar, which is in San Francisco, maybe 30,000 people. And then there's Solar Power International, which unfortunately just happened 2 weeks ago in Chicago. And there's everybody who's in the solar industry is there. And the wind industry has similar conferences as well.
What was your undergraduate degree?
English, yeah,
English.
nothing to do with it. Yeah.
And then you said you had a master's in?
In public policy, yeah.
Was that both your questions, sir?
Yeah.
Nathan and then.
I have a question about the disposability of the solar panels. You talked about like the 25-year lifespan. What really breaks in them, and then what of them can you use again when you build new ones?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the durability, for the newer panels, we don't actually know how much longer they're last. There have been solar panels that have been continuously operating for as long as 50 years. When I went to the Sharp factory in Japan, they were estimating 125-year life. So the main thing when things break down, it has to do with different expansion coefficients. You have basically materials that are expanding. Obviously, when it gets hot, expands and contracts. Glass and silicon, which is the main component, have the same expansion coefficient. Okay, so that's a benefit. But over time, there's something there's a backsheet, a Tedlar backsheet, and over time, that can wear. But for the most part, I haven't seen much of this problem because it's still sort of to come. And the recycling, it's difficult but possible to recycle broken modules. And some of them, that thin film project I showed you, that's actually cadmium telluride. So cadmium is a heavy metal. So they actually they post a bond, which they keep. So for whenever those panels are done with their life, they actually have a recovery. That's not typical for crystalline because it's not toxic anyway. So.
You talked a little bit before about building new communities that have solar panels in like residential areas.
but do they not put solar panels on old houses? Is there
Yeah,
an
so,
issue
sorry,
with the
that,
National
the,
Grid?
it's complicated, but that new solar homes program that's something that's in the Energy Commission. The older one, there's a huge retrofit program, which is much bigger. Those 200,000 projects I mentioned, those are all retrofit projects for the most part, and that's done by the utilities, and that's been hugely successful. And one innovation, people get very focused on technology. The actual more significant innovation in the last few years has been a financing innovation, moving away from buying solar panels with cash to buying everything with a lease. So basically you are paying, so for me, I installed solar with my wife 3 years ago, paid no money down. We pay $95 a month for 10 years, and then it's done, it's paid for. So, yeah.
Did you, by the way, on that, because I heard you earlier, the net zero, the plan for new houses in California?
Yeah, the goal for the state is by 2020 for all homes that are, new homes that are built to be zero net energy. So they're producing all their energy by
But wouldn't it
themselves.
make more sense to put solar panels on old homes that are already existing?
So, that is what I'm saying is that is actually, well, you want to do both things, right? We're building on a good year, California will build as many as 150,000 homes a year at our high point. This year it's significant, probably 50, 60,000. But so we want to get it right for the new homes, but most of the market right now is a retrofit market. Yeah.
Peter, maybe jump up if you can so we can hear you.
I was doing some reading and I saw online that you just have a 5% cap on net metering. That may have been incorrect, or is that correct?
There is a 5% cap on net metering.
Do you have
Yeah.
any plans to remove that, or is it just?
Oh, believe me, I have a lot of bruises on my back from fighting this damn thing. Yeah. So what we did, there was actually a change to, there was some vagueness in how the 5% was defined, actually. And so there were two options, and we went to the governor, and there's actually a more liberal interpretation of that, and we got him to adopt that over strenuous objections. I want to make a plug real quickly. I have a very close friend of mine and college friend, Mark Kimball, who's here, who just also installed solar. He lives in Essex, New York, and has been doing a lot of ways to attack climate change. He's been farming an organic farm with pigs, chickens, the whole 9 yards, CSA, and been doing it entirely without fossil fuels for the most part, basically with the teams of horses. And this woman, this Harvard-educated, like Manhattan writer, came out to write a story about young people going back into farming in the Champlain Valley, and he promptly married her. So now they've been farming together. She wrote a fantastic book called The Dirty Life, which I recommend to everybody. So,
Good plug.
yeah.
And we need labor. David's
Yeah.
talking about ways you can get into policy. And a number of the farmers that I work with are like, how can we make meaningful impact if we're not David running California's energy? And I think one of the farmers I talked to last week, she said, I don't care if it's wrong or right, but I just need to work physically hard to have hope in the face of climate change. So for those of you to whom that appeals, talk to me after this.
Great, yes.
We have plenty of physical hard work.
Yes, very good.
You would be, I think a lot of these students are interested in, we have, do you take students from UVM? Do you get students from UVM?
Yeah, we're actually right now merging our for-profit food producing business with a training program. So for those of you that are looking for a formalized training, we're working towards that. But if anyone wants to put together a tour, we do 4 or 5 tours a year, and any professor from over here that wants to get together a group to either come over and do a work party. And again, we're looking at, if David is looking at sort of the bigger picture and probably making more change faster, we're looking at how photosynthesis to plants ends up doing the same thing that photovoltaics do.
It is amazing to go. I mean, they make maple syrup and bread and butter and the whole 9 yards. It's incredible. So definitely check it. Essex Farm is the name of it.
Thank you.
All
Yeah.
right, so
I
back
do.
on electricity, any other people? Yes, please, over here,
So,
for energy.
awesome story, and California's obviously a big state with a lot of weight to move around, like you said, with the markets and everything. So, how can a state that does not have the same population and market that it is obviously so effective to manipulate in a sense in California?
Yeah.
How can that?
That's a great question. So it is true that a big state, one of the benefits is you can create economies of scale. And that really does help. It was new home construction and appliances or solar, right? But what you guys can do that's powerful is create models for other states. I really think that is the power of this thing with gay marriage, I want to come back to it is actually extraordinary that this transformation has happened in our culture in such a short time. Okay, the Republican Party in 2004, their campaign strategy was to run, on state ballots, initiatives basically to ban gay marriage because gay marriage was so unpopular at that point. They thought that would help them. Okay, now it's flipped totally, so that actually everywhere in the country where gay marriage was on the ballot, legalizing it, it won, right? So, and this is in a very short period of time, and it really was led by Vermont. I mean, the first civil unions thing, that was here. And so I just think there's an incredible power when you get a policy right to get other states to follow. And I just think you guys should reconceive how you think of yourselves, what you're doing, because it is a progressive state and a very big thinking state. It should be about bigger than Vermont. It should be trying to create models, national models that can spread to other states. And that's what the opportunity is.
Good, other questions? Yes, well, let's do, first I'll come back to you, Andrew.
You spoke a little bit about the market for solar shifting to China, and they're opening up new manufacturing facilities. And I know that's hurt some American businesses in ways because they haven't been able to cut their costs in such a similar way, and they've been having to readjust their business models. I'm curious, is it impacted negatively in any way?
It's hurt some, but it's helped some. I mean, so there's two American solar manufacturers left. First Solar, which is a thin film company, and SunPower, which is a high efficiency. And actually both are profitable and both are going to be okay. All the others are gone. So what's happening now is very much analogous to the auto manufacturing in the 1930s. There were like 300 American car manufacturers. We went down to 3 or 4, right? So we're going through that, but who it's helped are the solar installers. I mean, you have companies in Vermont installing solar that actually wouldn't be here were it not for Chinese companies bringing down the price of solar panels, right? So it has enabled us to be successful at different parts of the value chain rather than manufacturing. And I don't think the manufacturing thing is going to change anytime soon. I think China's too committed.
So why don't you go ahead.
I'm interested in looking at energy not only in terms of electricity, but in terms of thermal energy. And you really, as far as I could tell, talk mostly about electricity. I'm actually involved with a district energy project with using the wood chip plant and trying to increase its efficiency by using its thermal energy. Could you talk a little bit about just that aspect of California and its, I mean, I don't know, I mean, California is not, it doesn't have probably a lot of heating, but it certainly has cooling.
Yeah, so our heating, to the extent we have it, is almost all gas in California. We have a biomass, I would say a biomass problem in that we have basically a lot of forest fires, and they want to basically be able to clear the forest to use it for electricity generation. The problem is that is very, very expensive. That's like 2 to 3 times the price of solar PV. So I'm not a biomass expert. There's so much even just within solar that I get lost. So I'm not super deep on that part.
Does your commission deal with thermal stuff as well as electrical energy?
Only principally through our standards with new buildings called Title 24. So we set those standards. You can't build a new building in the state without complying with these really strict. You have a question, yeah?
Yeah, I actually have 2 questions. One is, how do you, in California, how are you balancing the reliability of the energy when you bring in so much solar and wind and stochasticity there? And the other is, talking about long-term projections and what we really have to do to get climate change to stabilize.
Yeah.
What percentage, especially given the increased demand, I mean, what are we going to have to do?
So eventually, I mean, I believe we need a 100% clean energy portfolio. Okay, that's the goal. We need to get off fossil fuel. We need to leave what's in the ground, right? And that's only going to happen when we make it cheaper. That's kind of what the game is right now, is have policies that enable that. But to your question about the intermittency, it's a big issue. One of the things actually that can help, I believe, quite a lot is electric vehicles, because we will actually eventually have a problem of too much solar during the day, overgen it's called. And so what do you do with that? If you have a fleet of electric vehicles that are flexible when they can charge, that's a great opportunity. And so EVs right now in California, we have about 40,000, and they're growing. They've been very popular. We're putting in a bunch of charging infrastructure, and every year they're getting more cost effective. We have a $2,500 per car rebate you get. And interestingly, what's been more valuable, can anyone guess what incentive policy is more valuable in California than a cash rebate? What? Yes, the carpool lane. The traffic is so bad that this policy, we just passed this a month ago, it basically, until 2019, if you buy an electric vehicle, you get to be in the carpool lane, even if you're just one driver. So,
David, all the way in the back. Andrew.
Hi, my name is Andrew. I had a question for you tonight. I'd like to know if you could tell us about the role that atomic nuclear energy is going to play in California's future. I know I've been reading a lot about them downplaying the use of generation facilities and kind of the safety hazards associated.
Yeah, so it's a great question. We built 5 nuclear power plants in California, okay? And they shut down 4 of them, through a combination of either ballot initiatives or we just had one a year ago that just conked out. And post-Fukushima, there's a lot of concern about that. The remaining nuclear plant I just visited this summer, it's called Diablo Canyon. It's on the coast. I went, some of the threats I'm not worried about. Like they're at 65 feet, so actually that's well above what a tidal wave could do. But there's still earthquakes, and there's a fault not, fairly close. My prediction is that plant will continue to operate for, at least another 10 to 20 years. But there's issues. I mean, all of the nuclear waste, there's nowhere to put it, so it's all on site. So one potential threat is if there were to be a bomb or 9/11 kind of just flying a plane into that. I mean, that is functioning as sort of a dirty nuclear bomb, and that threat is very much there because it's actually not that much space. I mean, the area where they store the spent fuel is a pool. It's literally, I've seen it's about the size of this room. It's maybe 30 feet deep. So it's all right in that space. And then some they take some out in dry cask. But it's basically not that much space, but that's a major vulnerability. But I think that plant is actually operating okay, so I don't foresee that changing. I think the environmentalist focus, to the extent we want to clean things up, is right now on gas plants and actually preventing the other nuclear plant that went down about a year ago. There's a big push to build a whole bunch of new gas capacity, which I'm opposed to. And so that's kind of where the focus is preventing new gas capacity and building more renewables.
Corey.
I was just curious if you've done any work with energy efficiency.
Yeah, so that's not my main area of focus, but we do quite a lot. The main things that I said are these appliance standards and building standards. And then in addition to that, we have a rebate program. So we give out as a state $1.3 billion a year for appliance rebates. So when you buy a washer, dryer, refrigerator, etc. And I'd say we're doing good, but not great on that. I've been very impressed by Vermont, but I met a whole bunch of people working at Efficiency Vermont. You guys have a great team.
All right, one more.
Yeah.
Wait, Nick.
So we have a thing here called the Clean Energy Fund that we use at the university. It's for projects for alternative energy and things like that. So I was just wondering, how would you use that if you were a student?
Good question. Well, that's a hard question. I think the first thing you guys want to do is make your campus a national model. And I just went, for example, UC San Diego. Okay, there is not a single rooftop on that entire campus that does not have solar. They've run out of roof space. Okay, the students there have just been absolutely tenacious. There's other places where you'd expect it, like UC Berkeley. They haven't done it, but they just happen to have a really, really active group. I just think there's a lot to be said for creating a model in every way. Like basically, you want a landmark facility in terms of efficiency and renewables, and then have a public display of that. I think that's a great way to start.
That's about it. Is there one last one here?
I think this gentleman maybe had one.
You mentioned automobiles as a source of storage. What about just batteries? How's the technology?
Good question. So lithium-ion batteries are, I think, the most promising of the battery technologies, and they are coming down in price. The leading manufacturer is Samsung, and they told me they dropped their price 20% just last year alone. For the first time ever, we have now solar companies like Solar City, which is the leading solar installer in the United States, are actually offering battery storage as an option for customers. So you can basically have storage, and these are for customers who are connected to the grid. So I'm optimistic about it long term. Yeah.
David, any closing words of wisdom from California?
No, just keep up think big, you guys. You have a great team here and a great opportunity. So thanks for having me.